Block Gemara. Today's daf Erev Shabbos is daf Yud Beis. So, what we are learning here is the view of Ben Pseira. So we just started here. We're learning the view of Ben Pseira in the Mishnah. There's an argument of Yeshua of Ben Pseira Erev Pesach in the morning. We know that this man for Korban Pesach we generally say is from Chatzos until nighttime. Rabbi Yeshua says, therefore, if in the morning you took a Korban Pesach and you shechted it and you had in mind to be a Korban Shlamim, then that's the classical case of Loy Lishmai. It's a valid Korban, just that the owners haven't fulfilled their obligation. But and he says it's as if you brought it up on the 13th day because for Chatzos has nothing to do with Pesach. However, Rabbi Ben Pseida says no. That Erev Pesach in the morning, if you brought it a Shlamim, it's possible. What's the logic in that? So we had first Rabbi Ishia. Rabbi Ishia said the only possible logic is that according to Ben Pseida, the entire Erev Pesach is suitable for Korban Pesach. He says Bein Arbayim means from the end of the previous night. That means from the morning until at night. That's what Bein Arbayim is. So then we brought a number of other psukim where it said like the Korban Tamid in the afternoon says Bein Arbayim. Does that mean you can bring it all day long? So he said no. There each question we posed. He brought a pasuk that tells us no, it means nighttime, including lighting the candles, because it says me'erev ha'boker, and Ketores has to be next to lighting the candles. So we're daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph, and we're up to the Gemara right here, about 10 lines on the top. So the last question we asked was the Korban Pesach also it says be'erev, towards the evening, so l'chayda means in night, afternoon, not like a Ben Pseida the entire day. Not the way that Oisha understood Ben Pseida the entire day. So he said, no, the reason why it's Erev is to tell you that you have to delay. If you come at a time of the day, entire day is kosher for the Korban Pesach. But it comes times for Mincha, for Tamid Sheben Abayim, then pause the Korban Pesach. First bring up the Mincha, and then bring up the Korban Pesach. And we use this law also regarding if you're davening Musaf, you can daven, before lunchtime. However, if it's now suddenly time of mincha, then you have to daven mincha before Musaf. And there's a big argument regarding Yom Kippur. If you, let's say, you pushed off Musaf later, and now it's time for mincha, what do? What comes first? But there are many Rishonim who hold that this din only applies if you're davening on your own. But if you're davening in a minyan, we never shift around the tefillas and whatever we're up to, that's where you're up to. But anyway, that's where we're up to. So the Baish's view of Ben Pseida is that the entire day of Erev Pesach, you can bring in Korban Pesach. So we're up to the Gemara, a very simple question. It says the Gemara, I don't understand the Baish's pshat. We're at Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph. We are about 8 lines at the top of the page. First one line is Shel Musafin. So now the Gemara asks, so why does so according to you, it says Bein Arbayim when it comes to Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim, and then we ask the question, all day long you should bring the afternoon Korban. So then you answer, we have another pasuk that tells us it has to be in the evening. So why use the expression Bein Arbayim at all? Which is so misleading. So you want to ask a question. So Bein Arbayim, by Ketores it says Bein Arbayim, but then you tell me it doesn't really mean that all day because the Ketores has to be done right next to the candle lighting. And Venedas by candles also says Bein Arbayim, but tell me again because it says Me'erev ha'boker, therefore it doesn't really mean all day long. So Lamali, so why does the Torah use the word Bein Arbayim? Which is misleading. That's question number one. But furthermore, we have a brayso. The way you understood Rabbi Yishai Ben Pseida is that the entire Erev Pesach is suitable for Korban Pesach from the morning and onwards. Yet, when Rabbi Yeshua said, when you bring a Korban in the morning, it's no different than bringing a Korban the day before Pesach or 2 days before Pesach. But we have a brayso where Rebbe tries to defend Rabbi Yeshua, and it's clear he doesn't learn pshat in Ben Pseira. Sorry, defends Ben Pseira. It's clear he doesn't learn pshat in Ben Pseira like Rabbi Yeshua did. He clearly learns that Ben Pseira does not argue when the Korban Pesach has to be brought. He clearly learns that the Korban Pesach, according to everybody, is brought from Chatzos and onwards. So how is he going to defend Rabbi Yeshua? Why, according to Ben Pseira, if you bring a Korban Pesach in the morning and have a mind of Shlamim, it's possible. Why? It's not Pesach yet, and we learned before. Throughout the year, a Korban Pesach becomes a Shlamim. So this is what Rebbe says. Hey, Shiv Rebbe Tachas Ben Pseida. Leave Rebbe Shua. What did Rebbe answer to defend Ben Pseida? Lo, no. I agree with you if you shechted a Korban the day prior to Pesach. Has nothing to do with Pesach. So if you had a mind Shlamim, no problem. No part of the day is suitable for Korban Pesach. On the 14th day of Pesach, even though you're right, in the morning is not the time for Korban Pesach, but since part of the day is suitable for Korban Pesach, therefore, if you bring it in the morning, if you bring in the morning, it's not a good Korban. If you had in mind Pesach, it's too early. If you had in mind Shlamim, because that day there's already a rider there that's already going to be brought up as a Pesach, you ruin the Korban because now is the time for Pesach. So what is he clear from that defense? that the Rebbe holds that the morning is not the time for Pesach. If you brought Pesach, then you wouldn't be Yitzeh. It's just that because part of the day will be suitable for Pesach, therefore the morning already has a shaykhis to Pesach. The V'im Misa, and according to you, what Rebbe should have said is Kuliro. He should have said that the morning is Korban Pesach.
You mean the whole morning?
The whole morning as well. So Rabbi Yechon different has another pshat in Mem Seder. Poisel Haye Bem Seder bePesach Shabbat Shachi Bein Lishmai Bein Shloishmai. But Bem Seder holds that the morning is not the time for Korban Pesach, but nor is it the time for Shlamim. And why not? Because part of the day, because part of the day is suitable. Because part of the day is suitable. Says the Gemara, Megadiv Borabavu. Now Megadiv is a very strong word. Like he's really poking fun at him, or he was angry at him. Very strong word. Sometimes we have that they mock him, but this is much more than mocking. He says this logic doesn't make sense. Why not? Because in Cain, if so, Pesach kosher lebem pseida heichmish kachlo. An interesting question. Fine, it's a heichit timtza. How can you ever bring a korban Pesach? What do you mean? How can you bring a Pesach? Because every time you bring a korban, first you have to designate it, and when you designate it, it has to be able to be brought up as a korban. If you designate a korban to be a korban, but at that moment it couldn't be a korban at all, it's not shaykh, it was possible. That's more going to find an answer. But more like this: to designate it in the morning, to designate it in the morning. If you designate in the morning, that it cannot be a shlamim, nor can it be a korban Pesach, because in the morning you cannot bring korban Pesach. It's too early, premature. You cannot bring it as a shlamim either, because you just said it's possible. Exactly, according to Seder. So if he sets it aside now, dichlemi karu, right? In other words, in the morning, what do you mean dichlemi karu? It was not wrong to be any korban. So what's the problem? Do it the day before. But the day before, it could be a shlamim, right? So no problem. Set aside the animal. At least it could be brought as a korban. But that's a case of called nida v'nitche. We had a whole sugi in Lulav HaGozel and Sukkah. Nida v'nitche. When you made it happen, it was suitable. And then it got pushed away. We also had it in Sanhedrin of Mem Zayin, which we'll talk about in a minute here. What happened? I set aside, I did an Aveda. I ate tray for fats. I set aside a korban. No problem. Nida. Now it's suitable. But before I went up to the base of Mikdash, I decided to become a goy. I embraced another religion. That's called a mummer. Nitche. I pushed away the korban. And then I did tshuva. That's called nida v'nitche v'nida. The din is once the korban is rejected, you cannot bring it back. So let's say I set aside the animal the 13th day. Nida, it can be brought as a shlamim. It's all right. Can't bring it as a psachim today, but as a shlamim, no problem. But then comes the morning, it's suddenly nidche. It can't be brought up as any korban. And then in the afternoon, it can be brought back as a korban Pesach. That's nida, nitche v'nida. And that's rejected. So how can you ever bring a korban Pesach? And we'll answer him in like Yimi just said. You did it before Pesach. It was suitable for a korban, okay, shlami, but it's suitable for something, and now it's pushed away. So therefore he said the whole thing makes sense. El Omar Abu said, the only way possible is that you actually have to designate in the afternoon itself, which is so difficult. You know, that's the only window you have, not only to bring the korban, but to actually prepare the korban. Abai says no. I feel the same at Safra in the morning as well. In the morning it's not suitable for korban Pesach. That's called mechusar zman. It's the same day. You're definitely going to bring it in the afternoon, but right now you can't do it yet. That's not called mechusar zman. There's nothing else to do. Just wait time. Biding your time is not called a lack in the korban, and therefore, as if the korban already inherently is shaykh to a korban Pesach. For the same day, it's not mechusar zman. Rav Papa says, I'll go even a step further. I feel the same urta. Even the previous night, you can set it aside because it's part of the same day. The day follows the night. Since it's part of the same day, it's not called mechusar zman.
I mean, when you get an animal and you prepare it for korban,
but didn't officially designate it. You checked the mumim 4 days by korban tamid, but you checked the mumim, but you didn't designate it.
They bought there a shepsel or something.
Yeah, but they don't come to Erev Mamash at Pesach. You want to make sure you have a place to, lodging place, and so on. You don't go to Chasta that morning. You come a few days before to get, climatized. So Papa says, even once you're at night, Laila e mechusar zman. The previous night is not a mechusar zman. It's still part of the same day. and he'll bring a raya. A baya may be held when it comes to kachim, the night follows the day, not the day follows the night. So maybe a baya felt, since we're talking about kachim over here, generally for other mitzvahs we say that the night is part of the day and therefore it's not really mechusas man. But when it comes, we're talking about kabbalah, say kachim, there the night follows the day. So therefore the night before is like the previous day. And therefore, the Abai doesn't hold, you can't go back the previous night. But a Papa says no, that right now it's not a korban yet. And therefore, as far as designation is concerned, we have a day, it's not Mechuzman. And how do I know that it's not Mechuzman? The Tani Rabbi Shmuel learned. It says in the Pasuk, so he said like this, Leil Shemini, Nichnis Lodili Saser. You have your korban, you have your animals, and then you count them, you go in the pen, you go through the portal over there, and then you strike the 10th one. We'll learn all about this in the future. You strike the 10th one, it becomes Maisa Behema, and you bring it to the Beit HaMikdash as a korban shlami. Maisa Behema is like korban shlami, but you eat it only the day and the night. And if there's a contract to then you can sell and all that. So Leil Shmini, the night already. Nichlis Ladilis Asi, you could already prepared for a korban the night. So what do we see from here? At night you can't bring any korbanos. We know that b'yayim tzavti, you're going to bring korban by day, not at night. So we see that Laila lav mechusas man, even though it's talking about korbanos, but it's talking about your involvement in the korban. Therefore, if we follow the normal rules of night and day. And how do I know this? Ukadirabi apaturiki, like Rabbi Apaturiki. That Rabbi Apaturiki, he asked a question. One pasuk says, that the animal should be 7 days with the mother. And so it sounds like as soon as 7 days expire, you could already make a korban. So the following night, the night of the 8th, he can. But then it says, from the 8th day onwards, the animal is forgiven, is accepted. Sounds like the night is not accepted. Which one is it? Okay, so how's it work? So Laila Ligdusha, at night you could already set it aside. And the Yom Latzabah, the actual korban, you can only bring during the day. So what do you see from all of this? That at night is not considered Mechusas Man. It's not considered man. Omalei. And Taisa already says, what's the big chiddush? We know that kabbalah can only be brought during the day. This discussion here is, if you did something wrong and you put it on the mizbeach, we normally say leave it there. But in this case here, because of the psukim, normally you have to bring a korban by day. You brought it at night and you put it on the mizbeach, leave it there. But here, because the Torah sort of clearly says it should only be by day, so if you put it on the mizbeach at night, you got to take it down and remove it. So it comes out from here, from Rabbi Vu's question, that he holds that even though the animal is alive, it gets rejected from bringing a korban, right? In other words, you're saying here that in the morning the animal's alive, but because you cannot bring it a korban Pesach, you cannot bring it a korban shlamim. Avu's question was, who's korban? So even a living animal, you could be. Usually we say once you shechted it and then became tummy or something happened, it's nitzche. But here. That's what he's asking you. If Balchaim Nitchin, Amala'in, yes, Rabbi Yechon holds it do. Not everyone, there's a machlek, but he holds it do. Rabbi Yechon said, and we had the kedushin. Behem Moshel Shnei Shutfin. There were two partners. Reuven and Shimon owned the behemoth. Each one owned half. Hikdish Chetzia. So Reuven decided to be makdish his share, but the animal cannot become kodesh because half the animal is still chulin. Your partner didn't agree. It's ma'akiv. It's holding it back. The other Gemara talks about if you want to get engaged to a half a woman. What happens. And then then tomorrow, on Sunday, you did that. But on Monday, you bought your partner's share. And the question is, what happens to this animal? Do we say automatically that, because you makdish your entire share of the animal, but now your share grew, expanded to the entire animal. What happens? It's holy, but you cannot bring it on the mizbeach. Why not? Because it's been rejected. When you made half the animal, when you said my share and the animal is korban, since the other half is chulun, it couldn't have been brought up on the Beis HaMikdash because chulun cannot be brought up in the Beis HaMikdash. So it was nitche and zadich meikara, and then it became nira, and then afterwards it became nira. It's rejected. But what we see from here is this is a living animal, and yet we say that it's been rejected. So it's been repelled. And din number 2, if you say that I want another animal to be like this one, even though it's an avera, the kedusha from here, this animal transfers to the next one as well. And the bigger chiddush is just like the original animal could not be brought up by Beis, neither can the second one. So we learn 3 things from here. Shmamina class, 3 things from here. Shmamina, first of all, that even living animals can be rejected. Number 2, some people say that when is it considered dichli if it was suitable and then you rejected it, then you cannot make it a reappearance. But if it was never suitable in the first place, as if nothing ever happened. Some people say that nothing happened, and whenever it becomes available, then it becomes kosher. Rabbi Yochanan says no. Since the moment you made it kodesh, it couldn't be kodesh. It's been pushed away forever. And number three, Shmamina, and we learn out that yesh dichli bedamim. Since when you made the animal kodesh, only half of it became kodesh. So what's the status of this animal? There's two kinds of kedushas. The kedushas are goof, the animal itself becomes sacred, or we say that the value of the animal becomes sacred. Here we say because half the animal couldn't be brought up on the base of Mikdash, you couldn't have made the animal holy. What you did was the value of the animal. Now the value of the animal is not really the animal itself is not really that holy, and we would have thought, well, Dichli is only if something's really holy and you reject it, but if it's only represented by holiness because it's a value that's holy, maybe it doesn't get rejected. From here we see clearly, yes, Dichli bedamim. That's how Rashi learns. Tosfos asked a very simple question. Every Dichli Mikara is damim. Every Dichli Mikara means it was never suitable to be a carbon. So what was it? It was only the value. And yet we say that it was pushed away. So how can you make two rules out of it? It's really one and the same. Because every dichum mikara means this animal was never suited to be a carbon. So what was it? It became holy, the value. I made an animal a carbon, but it was not suitable at that moment. Yeah, exactly. So therefore and it's rejected.
But it's not the same as Tmura, though.
No. Forget Tmura is a second. Tmura is a Tmura is a good halacha. But halacha number 3, which is yesh dichum adamim, and halacha number 1, that dichum mikara, that Baal Chaim dichum mikara, that's all one and the same. One and the same. So therefore, they say. So the answer, Rab Chaim is another shot. The answer is a case. There is a possibility if where it's not dichum it's dichum mikara, but it's not dichum bedamim. For example, you're putting blood in the vessel in the base of Mikdash, but the vessel had water in it already. So every drop of blood that goes in the vessel becomes nitcha. So from the beginning, it wasn't suitable to be blood. But then if you put enough blood in it that it changes the color, now it looks like blood, it's usable. It's not kedushas damim because we're talking about over here the blood of the animal which is very holy. So there we have a case of dichum mikara because every drop of blood that goes into that water is no good, but it was already holy. The blood. This is part of the carbon. So here's a case where you can have dichum mikara and kedushas haguf. But Rab Chaim Kohen, because of that, learns another pshat I was talking about regarding tamura. Yes, dichum damim that there is tamura even by damin. In other words, we would have thought that tamura is only an animal in itself is holy, so there's so much holiness there, you can transfer it to another animal. But when the animal itself is not holy, it's only the value, can you transfer it to another animal? And the chiddush is, yes, you can make tamura even by damim. Chiddush is damim. So in a whole different pshat. Anyway, so what bottom line is from here, this is Rabbi Yochanan pshat. Omar, talking about Dichli, Gemara brings a few other things. Amar says, and we had this in Sanhedrin. Omar Rabbi Yochanan, Achal Chaylev, you have to have you ate treifa frat for heat for carbon, says out of carbon, the hang midasi, and then you shmad, you became another, you embrace some other religion. The chazaba you did tshuva. Since during the stage while you shmad, you couldn't bring the carbon, so therefore we say we learn out from ma'ama oret, but not a mummer, is hoyel v'nitcha yitcha. Once it's been pushed away, it's been pushed away. So that's din number 1. That nira the nitcha, we don't say any more nira that you can bring it back. That's it. Once it's rejected, it's been rejected. Itmanami, we learned another similar case. You ate fast, and you became a shaita. Now a shaita, it cannot bring a carbon because you have to be totally cognitive of what you're doing. And the chazav and ishtafa, then it was cured. Once it's been rejected. So the principle is the same. It was suitable, rejected, and then became suitable. You cannot bring it up. Why do we need 2 separate cases? The case of a shaita and the case of someone who's shmatzich. The principle is the same. Answers the Gemara tzricha. We need both cases. But all of these cases demonstrate that even a living animal can be rejected. If only the case of where a person shmatzich, I'll say who dochin ashmidaim. When he decided to embrace some other religion and embrace Avodah Zarah, he pushed away the carbon. Okay, therefore, too late. It's not his fault. He became sick. So therefore, maybe as if he's asleep. Nothing. He didn't push it away. As soon as he's well again, he can do the carbon. And the chiddush is that since at the time there was a time that there was no owner to this carbon, it's been rejected. So the teacher's only this din. Here you have no control of recovery, and therefore once you reach that stage, that's it. Here you do have the ability. If we need both. Boy, Rabbi asked the question. Ochal chaylev. What happens? He ate treifa fats. The hifrish. Interesting question. The question that follow. We just learned the whole Gemara Harius, and the Gemara Harius. We learned that if, let's say, the Bezdin made a ruling, and an individual brought ate the treifa fats based on the ruling, if it's a yachid, you don't bring a carbon. The Bezdin doesn't bring a carbon because you need the majority. Rabbi had a machlek is the majority of a shevet, the majority of Klal Yisrael, or majority of Shvatim, but you need a majority, not for your individual. So what happened? You ate treifa fats. So you had to bring karma chatas on Sunday. Monday, the Bezdin made a ruling, you're allowed to eat treifa fats. So the moment the Bezdin made that ruling, even though you were already chayiv a karma chatas, since you didn't bring it yet, now anybody who eats treifa fats doesn't bring a carbon. So your carbon has been rejected. It's a big chiddush. But that's what it is, that you don't no longer bring your own carbon, even though it's for Aveda you did yesterday. We didn't learn that from Sechta Hairis, which is fascinating. Here we're learning with Sechta Zevachim, and we're learning a din about Hairis that we did not learn in Hairis, which the entire Gemara is about this case. And here is a Mechadish, and we take it as granted. That's how it is. We don't even bring a source for it. Even though I'm chayiv a carbon originally, but since now the Bezdin came and usurped that carbon in a way, nobody brings a carbon, unless it's a majority of the Yidden. But then the Bezdin realized they made a mistake on Tuesday, and they withdrew. So that's Ro. What happened in this case here? We said before that usually once a rejected. What about this case here? Why is this case any different? They ate fast carbon said that carbon. But the bezin paskin shechele mutter that treifa fats is mutter. The chazru behen the bezin changed their mind. Ma what didn't be. Me have a dichi. Is it considered rejection or not? Have a dichi, or is it not considered rejection? We'll see in a minute what the question. So this old man said, "Ki pasach." When Rabbi Yechon actually opened up the whole subject of dichi, Rabbi Yechon b'dichi maha pasach. In fact, this is where he started. What do you mean? My timer. This is the worst case.
Every time we have a he saba, it's not the same person. We're talking about
No. We had usually
which conversation they're talking about.
No, Ahu Sava. We had the Gemara at the end of the first page in Hedron. The Gemara there, the last Amud, the Chaf Alvin Beis there, was the Chaf on Beis. The Gemara there goes through every time the Gemara says Ahu Sava. Who is that? It's Rav Hamnuna, and the Gemara goes through each title we have is Kainim. This. Who are these people? And the Gemara tells us Ahu Sava generally is Rav Hamnuna, unless we know otherwise. So the Gemara like this. When it comes to the case of the person of Shmatzich or the person who became a Shaited, there's nothing wrong with the animal. The animal is the same. It's the owner. In this case here, the animal itself got rejected. The animal, this is worse. The animal itself, because the moment the Bezdin paskin that you're allowed to bring treifa fat, you no longer chayiv this carbon. So the animal is pushed away. For sure, this is a case of repudiation or rejection. You can no longer use it. Hasam gavitche. There, in the other two cases, the person was been pushed away, not the animal. The carbon also is pushed away. Because the carbon is pushed away, for sure you cannot bring it up. Says the Gemara, I'm not sure what the mucker is. That once I'm chayiv a carbon chatas, the Bezdin made ruling that you should be potter from bringing your own carbons. And when we had the subject about a nasi or kohen that means and then they changed status. They did it while they were hedges. What happens then? Yeah, but that so they changed by the time of the carbon. But over here, unless we somehow or another we anchor it to that and say, well, if you look at the time of the carbon, and at the time of the carbon, even the Gemara says you look at the time you did the Aveda, and that's why the nasi still has to bring whatever the original carbon is. So why should you be pocket? I don't know. Amashim Benazai. B'Kabalni, I heard Mashim Shnai Zokin, 72 people. Amalil Mis Lashiv Shnai Zokin. Why saying the single is 72? Even though we normally have 70 or 71, but from 72, the Kulu B'Chodesh Yitazakayim, because all of them are in uniform, it's as if Lashon Yochid. They're all in unison. They all agree. And that's a big chiddush that 72 people be together, they all agree. We learned in our Mishnah that Chatas and the carbon Pesach, they had in mind the wrong carbon, they are apostle. That's an exception. Benazai adds also carbon oil. Since nobody eats it, it goes on the mizbech. Nobody eats it. A carbon oil also is possible. Says the Gemara. What's the logic of Benazai? Amar Rav Huna. My time of Benazai oil. It says the pasuk oil hu isha reich nechoyech laHashem. It says oil hu. That what only if he made it for an oil, then it's all right. It's reich nechoyech. Hilish mok sheidah shaloilish but if he did not do it for the sake of an oil, not it's a pshat is that it's kosher, but you haven't filled your mitzvah. So it is possible. No, as you want to ask, following that logic, Hashem Namik Sibbe, who? By Hashem also says the word who, Hashem who. So we already said before in the Gemara, Ahula achad aktoris and morim. By Osham, where's it written the word who? After it says viktarta, you should roast. It already talks about the vihiktirois a coin Osham who. And remember that putting limbs on the mizbeach is not even essential for a carbon Osham. So how can it be that Osham who you have to have a mind Osham? If you didn't do it at all, it's still kosher. So obviously it can't be who to tell you that it has to be the Shem Osham. The Chsiv, so the Gemara says no over there also. So we answer. So I'm sorry. No, by oila also. We think it says by oila. It says viktarta. You should be bringing it up. Who by the word who by oila is also written after the viktarta. You should put it on the mizbeach. So my answer is right. Today who ksiva. It says twice the word who. It says oila hu la Hashem. Then it says Hashem who. It says twice who. And then since, you're right. Both of them are written after the haktorah. But since one of them is extra, im eina inyan. For this, will teach you that also when you shecht it has to be only for the sake of the oila. As the Gemara knew by Osham Nami Trehu, it says also twice the word who by Osham. So following your logic, you must be right. Forget the psukim. That what an oil is stricter than all the other kabbanas. So if you had the wrong thing in mind, surely it's possible. And what is it? We had before. Doesn't get burnt on the mizbeach. Shachta oil she doesn't get burnt on the mizbeach. And surely what should be lishma. The Gemara 1 second. The chatas is atones. That's why it's important to have the right thing in mind. Pesach is not a tone, and yet loy lishma is possible. Oh, 1 second. Mal Pesach has a very short window. That's why we're so machla. That's just the chiyach. Chazra din loy roi zekroi zeloy zed. Atzad and both have in common. Shein kotchim. They're kotchim. V'shach lishmon. He did it the wrong way, the wrong thing. Possible is possible. So therefore, afani avi oila. I will include oila. She kotchim. V'shach lishmon psula. Think about 1 second. Mal atzad shavish behen sheyesh ben sakodes. Whether it's chatas, whether it's oila, there's a side of kodes to it. There's kodesh. Masha Enkein, what do you call it? An oila, there's no kodesh. Where's the kodesh? By karma chatas, the aved, if you did it deliberately, you would get kodesh, and the chatas atones for that. And by Pesach, if you don't bring a korban Pesach, you get kodesh. There's an angle of kodesh. But by an oila, there's no kodesh, only for mitzvah say. Ben Azai tzad kodesh leparach. He's not concerned about tzad kodesh. And why isn't he concerned about tzad kodesh? Because he says the kodesh is not the same. Here, by chatas, it's an aved that would deserve kodesh. By oila, by Pesach, if you don't bring the Pesach, you get chorus. Two different choruses. Therefore, there's nothing in common between them. So that's why I decided to learn Oila from them, but not Osham. Says the Gemara. That's why I decided to learn Oila from them. So when I ask a question, no Osham Nami Laisi. Following this logic, then Osham also should be brought up. Why? The same thing. Because the Mahatzad, it's Kotchim, and you did a lot of Shema. You said you're not worried about. In the previous Gemara, we said we don't learn Osher from these two because of Karis. But now you tell me Karis is not a question, not an issue, and that's why you're learning Oila and Osher also. It's Kachim, Lo Lishma, it's possible. The Gemara says, no. This Tzad Shava does have something in common. And what do you call it? What's it called? So he said another question is that the tzad hashavah sheben, they both have a shaykhis to a tzibur. You can bring a chatas and a tzibur. You can bring a what do you call it? A pesach. Pesach is like a korban tzibur because all the yidden bring it at the same time. Pesach is sort of the in between tzibur and yachid. Each individual brings it, but at the same time. And an osham is a tzibur. So therefore, and an oil is a tzibur. Like oil is tamid. But Shenkin and Osham is never brought as a carbon tzibur. That's why Osham you don't learn from that. Ben Azai says. Or Ibai Sema.
By Pesach, that's what we learned. The din of tzibur.
That's if everyone is tamid.
You bring the carbon anyway.
Yeah, but the carbon itself is saying is a carbon tzibur. We're going a step further. Not only the people are tzibur, but the carbon, the animal itself is tzibur, because they all bring it together at the same time. There's a big shakla v'tarya when we daven with a minion. What part of davening Shemoneh Esrei is the minyan? A lot of shots is definitely the minyan, because without not answering, you can't answer. When we daven by Yechidus by Shemoneh Esrei, is that called a minyan? Is that called a minyan because we each are davening individually? Or do we say that so one opinion is it's big machlekes in the pasuk is that it's even though we're all davening individually, but because we're standing together in a room, that makes a minyan. And the other one say no, it's not a minyan. The minyan is only the chazaz and shots part. Because that's when all of them are mishtatev together as one. Exact same thing about Korban Pesach. Korban Pesach, like right like the Kula Balachas, just in between. You have everybody doing it together, but each one does their own thing. Anyway, so the boy say tzad chorus nami parach, or I can say no. That you're right. It's a problem. We can't learn the Kavachayim because chorus is an issue, and therefore Osher we don't learn, and Oile because Chatz and Pesach both have in common chorus. No, so which Ben Azai knows thing. Ben Azai Gemara give me the law. He learns it from the 7 just gaining. There's a big shakotai, but every Gemara says Gemiri, that Gemiri I learned. Is that halacha Moshe Messina? Is that you heard it from teachers? This is the rai they bring to the Yom Tov and others that this is it's not doing halacha Moshe Messina because it says here Gemiri, and who did he learn from? He learned it from his Rebbes, not Halach Moshe Sinai. So how to go to Kavachayim? According to this version, why did he give Kavachayim when it's not the basis? He wanted to sharpen his Talmidim. They should ask good questions. So he said something and wanted to see if they're going to say, "Hey, Rebbe, it doesn't make sense." Or he says, Rashi gives another shot. He wanted to teach them how to use a Kavachayim to be as smart as Ben Azai. Interesting. Sheyitnu libam according to Rashi. Lias charifin. He wanted to make his students sharp. Lidrash kalim v'chamurim me'alei. They should figure out how the whole concept of Chaim to Ben Azai, just like Ben Azai, who was considered, he was so sharp. Like exactly. Abai used to say that sometimes. I'm in a good mood.
I'm on fire today.
Yes. Okay. Good Shabbos. Tomorrow night.